Everybody survived the jump. Okay, so do we have any questions on the challenges or how this plays a part in what we do? All right, so then we get into international. So everything we've talked about up to this point is issued by the FASB, and it's the US GAAP. And again, every company that files on the SEC has to use GAAP, but there is another standard out there. And like I said, US uses GAAP. Every other country in the entire world uses IFRS. Tells you how important we are, but that's what it is. The IFRS is a completely different set of standards. They are controlled by the IASB. Same parallels, same political environment. It's just a little bit different in terms of legality, but the point is if you're issuing on an international market, then you have to go through IFRS standards. Okay. I love this quote right here. It's, in UK, everything is permitted unless prohibited. Germany, everything's prohibited unless it's permitted. In Netherlands, it's everything's prohibited even though it's permitted. It goes to show you that how difficult the IFRS had. Okay. If you think that the US is politicized and we have different competing issues, then just think about how complicated it was to get to the international stage and have all of these different countries with all of these different cultures all come together and say, yes, this is the language that we're going to use. We might not even speak the same language as an actual language, but we're going to speak the same in terms of accounting. So because of that, there's been a push to get GAAP in the US closer to GAAP under IFRS. And we've gotten close to it. We're getting closer, but we're definitely not there yet. And that's partly just because the US doesn't want to relinquish control. All righty. So then we get into ethics. Ethics is going to be a lot more important as you go through this. Again, we are held to a different standard because of the fact that we shouldn't have any particular reason to distort the numbers. Our job as an accountant is just to report the numbers as it is. But there's always external pressures. There's things that are outside of our control. It's not always easy to even know what the right thing is to do. The key is just make sure you're taking that step to think about it. Okay, so we'll go through just a little bit on the differences in the IFRS and GAAP. Again, we are trying to get to a general convergence. But again, the revenue recognition is the latest one. We got to about 90%, but we are still showing different things. And now when you do your assignment, you'll see that these variances become pretty distinct. So one of the differences is on how we define likely. So FASB will define likely as more likely than not. So that puts you at 51% of a chance of something happening. So so think about a court case, the chances of the judge deciding in your favor. If it's 51% or more, GAAP will tell you to record it at that point. IASB defines likely as in probable to not occur. So I forget exactly the wording, but the physical difference puts it at about 75% likely. And so if it's in that 60% likely chance, GAAP will record it, IFRS won't record it. So again, just on how we define the same word, and the standard itself uses the same word, but then when you go one step down and says, we define likely based off of this, it becomes a pretty distinct difference. And that could generate either delaying revenue recognition or in some cases bringing it forward. GAAP is definitely more detailed. If you go into the codification standards, you'll see specific mentionings of exactly how you record this transaction, when do you record this, how do you go about doing that. IFRS is going to back up a little bit and say, this is the overall aspect of what we need you to convey, and then you go from there on how you go about doing that. All right, so any questions on the difference between GAAP and IFRS? All right, so then I'm going to take this moment to show you what we're talking about here. So I told you that if you are a publicly traded company in the United States, you must have your financial statements issued with the SEC. The SEC uses a software called Edgar. Is my screen big enough for you all to see, or do I need to zoom in? Okay. So to find the SEC's website, just Google Edgar. It will be the first thing that comes to mind. When you Google it, it'll come into filings and forms. The first step you go here is to search for company filings. Then you go to search for a company's central index. Sorry, so yeah, you can search by here, either company, ticker, so you click on that and you'll get to any search bar. The best is if you know the ticker, then use the ticker. Otherwise, you can use the name, but you're going to use quite a bit. So for today, I'm going to search up Facebook. The ticker for Facebook is FB. So when I search for it on this website, is every statement, every pronouncement, every one of those auxiliary information that has ever been filed by this ticker number with the SEC. Told you the key that we're looking for is the financial statements. The financial statements, the form that you file with the SEC is called 10K. K means at the end of the year. If it's a quarterly report, it's going to be a 10Q. But this is your annual report. Nowadays, they have the interactive data, so people can go in and drop it and then put it into their Excel or all of their other various tools. You can go to old school and get the actual document itself. And I was not kidding. So this is 108 pages. It's the total document. The financial statements take up from they don't start until page 73 and they end on page 77. So out of 104 pages, only 4 of them are the financial statements, okay? We're going to talk about those 4 pages because that's how we get to a common language, is how does it get to the numbers. But realize that majority of this document is in all of the auxiliary information that they use to explain those numbers, okay? That's where you get lawyers involved. That's where you get more flexibility in terms of management's decision. But I can tell you, every company is looking at what their competitors are reporting, what they reported in prior years. They're trying to get an idea of what their investors are looking for, so that way they can prepare it in the same format. But at the end of the day, your financial statements will always have the auditor's opinion. So I can see here. So Ernst & Young, Big Four, and audits Facebook. You can see that they signed off on this. They have to give an opinion. That opinion is going to be materially correct, which we call an unqualified. We're not going to qualify what we say, or we're going to qualify it and say that it's materially correct except for these things, or we're just not going to issue an opinion. But as well, just like the managers, the independent auditors have to sign off on the financial statements themselves and the internal control over those financial statements. So the auditors also have to check, thanks to PCAOB, is the numbers correct, and are the policies, procedures, and people there in place to where that the numbers that you're showing have a higher likelihood of being correct. And then you get into the balance sheet. So again, we'll go through the asset side of things this semester. You'll go through the liability side. But each of these numbers mean a specific thing. Cash, we talk about cash as in cash what's in my wallet, but that's not the definition of cash when we're talking accounting. Those are different words. And when I look at Facebook's financial statements, I need to be able to compare this number to when I look at Amazon's financials or Google or anything like that. This is the end goal here. Makes sense? Anybody have any questions? Everybody see how I went through Edgar in order to get these financial statements? And that's very important for this class, because again, our goal in this class is to tell you what these financial statements mean. So everything that we learn in class is going to be helping you figure out what to put on this financial statement if you're preparing it, or how to translate what is on here. So that's all for chapter 1. This PowerPoint slide is the highlights, but you still should read the text if you're having any particular difficulties. Thursday, because we're still in the Zoom, I will submit the assignment. You'll go into Blackboard for this week. It'll only be available. I'm going to do it because of technical difficulties, and I know campus lost Wi-Fi apparently today. I'll do it 5 minutes after and up to 15 minutes of the class total. So you'll have from 12:35 to 12:50, right, to do the assignment. When you're done with the assignment, jump into the Zoom call. And at that point, we've gone through the lecture, so I don't have much other information to add, but I'll give the answers to the first 5. We'll go through a few of the problems in the back of the chapters, and then from there we'll wait for chapter 2 for next week. So any questions, comments, concerns? Is this about a decent pace for y'all?
So in regards to organizations, we'll only have to worry about FASB, IFRS, GAAP, but we won't really have to worry about CAP or the WEET committee as much.
No, I don't get bogged down because most of the purpose of showing you these difference and giving you the history is to give you a sense of just how complex things can get. Okay, in principles, it was very basic. This is an asset, this is liability, this is how you record a journal entry, this is how you increase, this is how you debit. Every transaction that we gave you in principles had a right or wrong journal entry. But that is not accounting. Majority of the accounting is going to be spent on where those aren't a cut and dry, this is the journal entry you need to make, this is how you need to make it, right? If it was that easy, we send it off to India at this point and do the processing, India or Kuala Lumpur or Latin America. Once we get it down to this is how you process it, the jobs that you're competing for are going to be focused on that. So we're trying to get you aware of starting to think through exactly question, what is the right way to do it? Why should we do it this way versus the other way? Because you can see when it gets down to, especially when you talk about intangibles, when you talk about fixed assets, historical versus future value, there's a lot of, there's no right or wrong, and it depends on where you push the lever of conservative versus useful versus monetary. So yeah, we want to show you how we got to this stage, and at some point those might become relevant if you decide to argue with the SEC's findings. But at the end of the day, right now, the highest authority in terms of GAAP is the FASB codification, and that's the key. Everything else is no longer relevant. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
So you said the quiz would be open on Blackboard next class period?
Yeah, like I said, because of Zoom and because of the way we're doing this, it's gonna, I'll give 5 minutes just for everybody to go from your last class to this class or whatever you're doing, but it'll be, so class starts at 12:30, the quiz will be open at 12:35. You'll have exactly 15 minutes before that closes, and then you'll come into the Zoom call. And at this point, the Zoom call, we've done the slides, so we'll go through what the answers are on the quizzes so everybody understands those key points, and then we'll go through some more of the problems and questions that are in the back of the book and give a little bit more practical sense of how these interrelate to each other. And then from there, it's just open-ended if you have any questions. So I know I ended way early, but I doubt anybody minds. But again, if you have any questions, I'm here. So yeah, I keep forgetting we're at an hour and a half now instead of 15 minutes. So all right, I'll stick around. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the recording and turn off my share screen. But I'll stick around for a few more minutes if you had any questions.